FM24 in the beta form has been out now for just over a week, and I've played a lot during the last week. And I thought I'd make this video just to share with you my first impressions. Is it good or bad? Well, some good and a lot that needs improving. Here are 10 of my initial thoughts about FM24. Let's go and kick some balls. Hello and welcome to FM with Old Man Phil, and if you are a brand new visitor here, I'm Phil and welcome to the channel. And FM24 has been out now for just over a week, and I have, I confess, been playing a lot of Football Manager since its arrival a week ago. And so I thought I'd make this video and share my initial thoughts, my top 10 first impressions, 3 of which are good, 5 are not so good, and 2 things that you might not have noticed while you're playing the game. But as usual, if you are brand new to the channel and you like FM content and you love to see people suffer playing the game, then I can tell you, you are definitely in the right place. So why not subscribe, like, watch, comment, help the channel to grow, do all that good stuff and help us to support the very good work of the British Heart Foundation. And so without much further ado, let's move straight on to impression number 1. The new 3D graphics. And just as they promised, the improvements to the graphics in the 3D gameplay is absolutely super. And they have added a lot more in terms of player movement, in terms of ball delivery, in terms of how the players interact with each other. And there have also been improvements to dribbling and tackling. And many of the goals scored look a lot better than they did in FM23. Overall, I have been very, very impressed with the work that has been done, especially as this is the last of its kind before switching over to Unity in FM25. And I was not expecting this much of an improvement in FM24 to the graphics. But boy, have I been very pleasantly surprised. And so that is first impression number 1. The graphics are very much improved. And let's take a look at first impression number 2, which is also good. We were promised much more difficult transfer battles, but these don't seem to have materialized. And certainly in the beta experience, I have been able to sign all of the players that I actually targeted. There have been no other bigger clubs coming in and targeting the players that I had targeted and creating huge problems for me. The only thing that I've had a problem with is, of course, the Saudi Arabia clubs coming in with ridiculous amounts of money and bidding for my top players. But that's to be expected, and we have held on to some of them, and we've lost some of them, but that is not out of the ordinary. That is just typical FM. But the intermediaries have proved extremely useful, and I have used intermediaries 5 times in the 2 saves that I have been doing so far, and 4 out of 5 times it has been successful. Just by placing them in the transfer room does generate a great deal of interest, and I have found it's fairly simple to sell players once you place them in the transfer room. I've only had one problem, and that was Flynn Downs. He didn't want to leave, but he's quite happy to sit in my squad unregistered, and we might even use him for the smaller games in the cup competitions. Bless him. But 4 out of 5 times I've been able to sell players, and that's a big plus, a big step up from FM23, where it was almost impossible to sell unhappy players. And moving on to good impression number 3, the set piece creator. Now, while this doesn't solve all the problems and doesn't give you complete control over creating set-piece routines, it has made the game a little bit more aesthetically pleasing when it comes to set pieces. It is your set-piece coach who will work out where players move to and where the ball goes to, but it does make a difference in terms of what you see on the screen. No longer are we putting up with the same standard set-piece deliveries to the near post or the far post. We can actually have some kind of input. And you can, for example, set up a near post in swinging corner and then add routines to it, which will be used less frequently but will be worked upon, and you will see them in game. And so whilst you have some element of control, what I really think matters at the moment is the quality of your set-piece taker and how many set-piece takers you have, and especially how good they are. For example, in the West Ham save, we have Ward-Prowse and many others who are also capable of taking a good set piece. And so West Ham in Season 1, they scored 35 goals from set pieces, which is quite phenomenal for a team in the Premier League. Middlesbrough, on the other hand, have not had such success, and as we've moved into the new year at Middlesbrough, they have only scored 5 times from set pieces, using the same methodology that I used for West Ham. But because the quality of their set piece coach is not so good, and the quality of their set piece takers is not so good, then I guess that makes the difference. And probably we're going to see about 12 to 15 set-piece goals from Middlesbrough, which is a lot less than the very good set-piece takers and set-piece coach of West Ham. And so let's move on to the things that are not so good. And firstly, let's talk about the results on the pitch. Impression number 4. Let's look at results on the pitch, and there have been 2 saves, one at West Ham and one at Middlesbrough. And the results for both teams in both seasons have been uncannily similar. West Ham, who were playing in the Premier League along with the Europa League, they managed to finish in 7th in the Premier League, and they reached the final of the Champions League. And whilst they had some very good performances against Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal and Newcastle, they really struggled against teams like Burnley, Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Luton, teams at the bottom of the league who they should have won against quite comfortably, but never throughout the season seemed able to do so. And that is also very similar to Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough, a save that we took over from FM23. They were in their 4th season, they were in the Champions League, and they were expected to finish 12th in the Premier League. The season is not yet finished. We are currently in March, and they are on target to finish in around 10th to 12th place, and they have done extremely well in the Champions League, qualifying for the Champions League playoffs, finishing in 9th place in the group phase. They, like West Ham, have struggled against teams like West Brom, Everton twice, Nottingham Forest, Norwich, but have had extremely good results against the likes of Arsenal, Newcastle and Manchester United, as well as Manchester City. And so it doesn't seem to be right to me, and there are patterns which seem to have developed across both saves. Tactically, I don't think that the low block works anymore. I'm not sure about this, but every time that I close the game down in the last 10 minutes, as I was doing successfully last year in FM23, I just seem to invite the opposition on, and I've suffered many draws as a result of this tactic. So I think tactically this year, it's got to be much more attacking, and so any tactics that I design this year, I think probably will be a very fluid attacking style, and I think those are going to be the most successful tactics this year. The results on the pitch have got me a little confused and a little worried about how much control I actually have over things at the moment. The jury's still out on that. I'm sure it's just me, and I'm sure that we do have control over the games and what happens on the pitch. I just need to develop and learn the new game this year, which I think is a lot different tactically to last year. Team talks have become a little bit more difficult, and it can often result in players wanting to leave or you wanting to sell a player. And so difficult has it become at the moment that I would rather not talk to players, and I do my best to avoid talking to players at all costs, even down to the fact that I will praise training at the moment, but I'm very reluctant to actually criticise players when they haven't been performing well in training, just for fear that they may decide that they want to leave the club, or just for fear that our relationship breaks down so badly that I'm forced to sell them. And so in FM24, talking to players, I found, is a lot more difficult and a lot more risky. Similarly, you have to be a little bit more careful when it comes to team talks this year. And if you get your team talk wrong, you can upset the whole team. And this can result in 1 or 2 players becoming desperately unhappy and sulking for most of the season. This has happened in my West Ham save when I got the team talk confused. And because my team talk at the end of the match didn't match my team talks pre-match and during half-time, then the team got a right strop on. This resulted in 2 of the team leaders, Bowen and Souček, coming to me. And although Jared Bowen accepted my explanation of the team talks, I was unable to pacify Kufal. And as a result, he went into a sulk for the rest of the season. And what's actually happened is that I've ended up selling him. And so you have to be very careful as well about team talks and upsetting players by confusing them. For example, don't tell them at the beginning of the game that you expect them to win, and then at the end of the game you might say, well, I thought you were a bit unlucky there today. That is a total mess, and they are going to come at you for that kind of thing. And so you definitely need to be a little bit more careful when you're doing your team talks this year. The amount of injuries that you're getting in a season have also increased, and I have had a lot of injuries across both saves, and it's not uncommon to find 3 or 4 injuries during a week, maybe even 5. I did at one time have 10 players injured at the same time in the Middlesbrough save, and I think at one point in the West Ham save I had 8 players out for a particular game week. Injuries seem to have got out of control. And related to injuries, you have to be very aware of how many goalkeepers that you have within your squad. And I would suggest that 3, maybe 4 goalkeepers are what is needed currently at the moment. It is not uncommon to have 2, maybe 3 goalkeepers injured at any particular point during the season. And I have also had 2 goalkeepers injured in one game, which has meant that I had to play a Rezo, a striker, in goal for the last 10 minutes. But with goalkeepers getting injured just as frequently as other players in your squad, I would say it would be a good idea to have 3 goalkeepers in the squad for sure, and maybe 4 if you can manage to find a young goalkeeper as well who is able to do the job. I have not ever seen this before in FM, and it is definitely new to FM24, these goalkeeper injuries, and I am hoping that they will address this, and when the real game drops that they will have put this right and goalkeepers will not be getting injured quite as often as they are at the moment. And I don't know if this is actually for real, but I have been noticing over the 2 seasons that I have been playing with West Ham and Middlesbrough that if I score a goal early on which is disallowed for offside, I will go on and lose that game. This has happened so many times now that I'm beginning to be able to predict when I'm going to lose a game. And I'm not sure if you guys have experienced the same, but it's certainly something to look out for. The jury's out at the moment. It might just be my paranoia. But when you're playing, take a look at what happens when you have an offside goal within the first 10 or 15 minutes. Do you lose that game, or am I just dreaming this one? And then the final thing that I have noticed, and you may or may not have noticed this, but the bigger teams in the Premier League will make substitutions in the last 5 minutes or so. And when this happens, their substitutes will go on to score. And I think this is really sneaky, because if you are playing in key highlights, it doesn't give you the opportunity really to go into the opposition instructions and make changes according to their substitutions. And this has happened on at least 2 or 3 occasions to me with the bigger teams. This is very, very sneaky, and what I'm having to do now is be very aware that they are going to make substitutions late on in games, and then I will slow the game right down to full match while I make my changes to the opposition instructions in order to try and combat the fact that they are going to score later on. But be very aware of this. You may or may not be aware of this, but the big teams in the Premier League do make late changes very late in games, and this can cost you if you don't mark them or close them down or adjust their opposition instructions in some way. Be very careful about this one. And so that's it for this video. 10 things that have made me think a little around FM24 so far. If you are brand new to the channel and you like FM content and you love to see people suffer playing this game, then I can tell you, you are definitely in the right place. So why not subscribe, like, watch, comment, do all that good stuff and help the channel to grow and help us to support the very good cause and the very good work of the British Heart Foundation. And all that remains to be said now is I hope you found something useful in this video. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.